Welcome to the IFT Central stage, and our next presentation is why you should become the traceability guru at your organization. I am pleased to introduce Thomas Burke with IFT.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. I was told to project, so I was trying not to over-project. As Tim mentioned, I'm Thomas Burke. I'm Food Traceability and Safety Scientist at the Global Food Traceability Center, which is an office of IFT. And with me today, I have Ricardo Akawa from Ripe.io, who's the Director of Digital Food Science. So today, I'm going to just kind of, for this session, I kind of want it to be informal and kind of have a conversation about traceability. It's a big area of importance in food science, as evidenced by the Traceability Central, which is a new event area that is featured at IFT this year, hosted by GFTC. At the space, if you haven't visited yet, we have kiosks of featured companies, including Ripe.io, and we also have presentations from both invited speakers and sponsored technology showcases. So it's a really interesting area that's growing as digitization has increased. And I'm going to kind of talk a little bit about the overall trends, a little bit about my journey in traceability, and basically highlighting the benefits of knowing traceability and being a traceability expert within your organization. So I just have a couple of slides. Oh, is that better? I was pretty good before. So I have a couple of slides just to kind of go over traceability. So how many of you have heard or feel familiar with traceability? So pretty good in this audience. So I'm just since you guys know a little bit about it already, I won't beleaguer the point. But I will say that it's a growing industry by considerably, with $14 billion just in the U.S. being projected in traceability and traceability related services by 2024, just in 5 years. It's kind of with this. It's complemented with this. More digitization of supply chains. That's a trend that is happening alongside emerging technologies like blockchain, Internet of Things, and AI, machine learning algorithms to analyze that data. And so complementing with that digitization is the ability to use that in the food supply system. So being able to effectively trace and track your product from the origin all the way to the retailer or even to the consumer. There's a lot of conversations happening right now in traceability, and being well versed in those things can really can enhance your career. There's a lot of different initiatives that are enabled by traceability, including sustainability, consumer transparency, as well as food safety. So for a lot of people, when they think about traceability, they're only really thinking about chain of custody, being able to react to recalls. And while that is very important, but there is also this vision of using traceability to enable other what we call use cases of the traceability system. So being able to enable sustainability initiatives. One of the things that GDST works or the GFTC works on is something called the Global Dialogue in Seafood Traceability, trying to standardize data elements and data sharing protocols so that information about how particular seafood is caught and where it's caught to ensure that it was caught legally and that it's authentic as it goes through the supply chain. Other things such as being able to list information about a product to the consumer is really an emerging trend. So I'm going to just talk a little bit about the actual skill set of traceability and kind of why it's such a fun and an interesting field, and that's not only just a niche thing. So it's been a little bit niche as a skill set previously because the technology was kind of in its infancy, but as the excitement around blockchain has really enhanced enhance the visibility of traceability in a lot of people's minds. This is really going to become a skill set where you can really enhance how effective you are in your job, because it touches on every component of a food company. So there's three really big domains that you work in traceability. It's regulatory compliance. So initially, traceability was really about being compliant with things such as the 2002 Anti-Bioterrorism Act, having record-keeping requirements on your suppliers and who you supply to. But with FSMA and a more preventative mindset, and with other commodity-specific regulations, that has actually really become a chief part of being an effective traceability expert. So having good handle on the regulatory requirements and other, and also any sort of standards process is important. And then also understanding the IT, the information technology aspect of it, understanding how your traceability system integrates with your ERP. And I've actually talked to quite a few QA folks that have talked about their enhancing of their IT knowledge over the years. And this is actually can be a really great skill set for you to gain skills in that, because it's something that might be tangible to your day-to-day work, where you can know more about the other departments and other aspects of your business. And then also operations, so the actual operations of the company that you work in, integrating that with these two other aspects of traceability. So as I was talking about earlier, the use cases of traceability are basically the end goals, the scope of when you're designing a system. And this is going to be a backbone to a lot of the initiatives to improve your competitiveness. So that can be things like risk mitigation, so being able to mitigate food safety events, as I said earlier, or being able to mitigate like problems with your products in your supply chain potentially. So whether that's something like human rights violations or sustainability issues, ensuring that those aspects can be mitigated, because you can trace the provenance of your product and audit against that. Also, we're finding when robust traceability takes place, you can have really enhanced efficiencies within your supply chain, and then you can actually have a large enough data set to really make some actionable decisions. And then also you can differentiate your product really effectively. So the thing that's really cool about knowing having this traceability skill set is it really allows you to conceptualize the entire business, because it touches on so many different aspects. It can even touch on marketing, because you may use that marketing or you may use that traceability data in order to enhance the differentiation of your product with your consumers. So it allows you to also meet different people that you may not necessarily have before, and also can connect you to a really great network of people outside of your organization that are very passionate about the subject. So with that, I have my little spiel, and I'm going to hand it off to Ricardo.
Thank you so much. So I'm Ricardo Cola, and I'm. Is it okay? Okay. Yeah. And I'm director of digital food science at Tripe.io. So what I wanted to ask first of all is, yes, some of you are familiar with traceability. How many of you are working or think they are working on traceability right now in your companies? A few of you. So if you had to see about these three business cases, which ones are you working on? Is it risk mitigation? Is it supply chain efficiencies? Or is it market differentiation? Or all three? Risk mitigation most. And so I wanted to share my personal story of how I ended up working on traceability. And most of our current clients are working on risk mitigation. But I ended up starting work on traceability through market differentiation, which is pretty unique. My background is I'm a flavor scientist. I never really thought I would end up working with big data, blockchain, and traceability. And then about a couple of years ago, I stumbled upon a program that was tracking and tracing the quality of tomatoes from farm to fork. And the last part of it was trying to define the best tasting profile based on the condition of growing, the cold chain, and all the parameters that come before taste. And I saw that there were some gaps in how they were acquiring taste data. And so I just wrote to the CEO and said, listen, why don't we put together a taste program? And they ended up hiring me. And that's my entry into traceability. So the first message for people that want to work in traceability or are considering, continuing their career is that there you can take it from different angles. You have maybe a supply chain background or a data analysis, data scientist, or even flavor like me. And if you're interested in bringing more transparency to the food supply chain, and with that transparency also create concrete business value, there's no wrong or right path to get into traceability. So that's the first message I wanted to share. And um, the second is what competences should the team have? And at Ripe, we have a strong soul on software and technology development. But they soon realized that they cannot sell blockchain or distributed ledger to the food industry without having some background in food. So trying to diversify the team and having the IT persons, the software development, the blockchain engineer in our case, together with agronomists, food scientists, data scientists as well, and have the team work on projects together is, I think, one of the biggest learning we have. We are a 3 years old company, so relatively small, but having those competencies working together and trying to understand the different channels of clients and their needs is of primary importance. So just a little mention on the type of clients I'm working with. So obviously, I am here at IFT and very glad that part of the Traceability Central Initiative to increase the awareness on the importance of traceability, especially with ingredient companies. There's a lot of reluctance in sharing data, and so one of the important novelty that technology is bringing is blockchain and distributed ledger that allow you also to share some selected data without losing competitive advantage. And so that's a very important entry point for ingredient companies wanting to invest a bit more in traceability. We work with CPG companies, we work with big farmers and industry categories. And the other important aspect of traceability that we encountered is that it's only as good as the weakest link of the supply chain. So if you work with a distributor or a supplier that is not willing to share data because of X reasons, then you're gonna find some barriers in really tracing the ingredient or the food item from farm to fork, let's say. So trying to find a network of collaboration is another critical element of traceability. So those are a few of the generic aspects that I wanted to share with you, and also wanted to kind of open the floor to questions and interactions, so that we can better address, what a career in traceability can look like, what it will be looking like. Another element I would like before the question is, what will that be in 5 years' time? I started knowing nothing about traceability 3 years ago, and the curve of learning has been steep. There's a lot of work involved, obviously, but there's many more. I just wanted to mention, without mentioning the name of a client, many more companies investing in this. And one of our big clients created a global traceability group with allocated budget for traceability projects, which means that they do not depend anymore on the business units, and they can deploy traceability programs with their own pretty consistent budget. So I felt that this approach within a company was really forward thinking, because now they are really investing big bucks in traceability, and they are starting to bring returns on those investments. One of the example that client gave us is that by improving their traceability program and by having all their sites worldwide compliant, they are not at 100%, but they could in terms of food recall benefit, they could pass from a cost of 50 million to down to 4 million. So they had a benefit of 46 million in 5 years. So it might look big or small to you, but it's a really specific ROI on an implementation of a project. I think that's, we can open the floor for questions.
Does anyone have a question? Oh.
As I understand it, blockchain is difficult to keep up with once you acquire so many interactions along that chain. How are you addressing that with RIPE.io?
So with RIPE.io, blockchain and distributed ledger, there's a small difference between the two, are part of the platform we offer. Some of the, so we store all the transaction on a blockchain, but we store it through an hash, in other words, an indicator that will point to events. The real data is then stored off-chain, so there's a mirror off-chain, so that we make it more easier on the software and on the capabilities of search. Blockchain is not ideal when you want to search fast data, because there's a lot of rules and on back and forth of data. So we use shortcut for that. So we maintain always an hash and a link to the real data there, but then all the search happens off chain through cloud databases. So that's one way to address the issue. And the other way is we are working with a couple of platforms. One we will announce in a couple of weeks' time. I can't tell you which one now, but it's a distributed ledger platform that reduced the time of interaction with the blockchain. So when we go and want to search of 20 times versus the previous blockchain we were using. So there's also advances in software development.
Anyone else have a question they would like to ask Thomas or Ricardo?
Any student thinking of on a career in traceability?
So you kind of touched on the fact that your business is only 3 years old. We come from the cannabis industry of Arizona. My question would be, when we're trying to increase the traceability, what verbiage would you use when talking to other companies to kind of, for lack of a better example, carry a big stick and letting them know how important that is in order to continue purchasing products from them when you can't find another provider of that, but when it's just that important for providing that level of data to patients, as far as from the very beginning of the product integration, that that product has been executed in a way that's safe for them to consume. My problem would be that sometimes it's hard to acquire a certain level of food packaging and being able to acquire that data. Is there anything that you could suggest as far as conversations with those companies to provide that data if you're a small startup?
So you are looking to get data from packaging companies, or well, the way we are working currently is so, and it might not answer your question, but we are, let's say, working with a big quick service restaurant or with a CPG. They have some leverage on their suppliers to to provide us with data. We try to give the big supplier less burden on the data acquisition. We try to work with them as much as possible, but there needs to be some willingness to collaborate, and this comes often from the lead client that select the supplier that they think will be more amenable to provide those data. Once we do a pilot with, let's say, the early adopters or the best suppliers, then they have more leverage to go to other companies and say, okay, that's the benefit we are giving. In the case of a farmer, we are giving feedback loop on the farmer on how to change or tweak a little bit, the harvest date to provide the tomato at the right moment for us. So once you have the knowledge that can be shared across the different providers, they can see that there might be a benefit, and so they might be more open. That's one way. The other way is more of a the Walmart way. When you have big shoulder like that, you force your supplier to put data on a blockchain. It's not the preferred way, but we are riding the wave. It's kind of tough.
I have a really quick question. Could you clarify how that $46 million savings was achieved?
Yeah, I can't really give you too many details on the example, but it was achieved by the fact that they could identify in a much faster way from which batch the inclusion of a plastic contaminant was present in one of their products. So instead of recalling a value of 50 million of the batches because they didn't know where it was coming from, they just recalled 4 million.
All right, if we don't have any more questions, I will thank Thomas and Ricardo for your presentation. Thank you all for attending. We have another session starting at 3:45. Trends, Motivations, and Expectations of the Future Science of Food Workforce, Feeding Tomorrow Research Data. Feeding Tomorrow is IFT's nonprofit foundation.